Everyone has an experience they think of with this series. For me, it was when I was over at my older cousin Robbie's house. Now, in the basement, he had this system that I had never seen before called a PlayStation, playing a game that I had never heard of before either. And I specifically remember that the box for the game being gigantic. I think this was before that they had moved to jewel cases, and at the time he was fighting giant spiders, and I was learning much later that he was in a much progressed part of the game. Now, years later, I got the game as well, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. The jumping dogs through the window, the zombies, all of this I missed, having only seen a tiny bit of the game, and really one of the only parts to not have either dogs or zombies. And I absolutely loved it. Coupled with my discovery of the George A. Romero zombie films through my friend Matt.
First, he created the most frightening film ever made. Then, he took his unique vision of terror one step further. Now, George A. Romero takes us out of the night, beyond the dawn, and into the darkest day of horror the world has ever known. Day of the Dead.
And I couldn't get enough zombie stuff. I played all of the Resident Evil games, and for a while, I think everyone thought that that's how things would go for Resident Evil. Zombies. Fast forward all these years later, and the walking corpses that used to be new, fresh, and scary have grown a bit stiff, to say the least. Not just in games, but the overexposure in movies as well have led to them really not being what they once were. With the latest Resident Evil game coming out titled Resident Evil 8, or Village Resident Evil, or Resident Evil 8 The Village? Anyway, it's still better than the title for 6 with the giraffe getting, well, what do you think that looks like? Anyway, I thought it was the perfect time to play the one Resident Evil game that I never got around to playing. Enter Resident Evil 7. A departure from the norm, but a return to form for what the original goal of the franchise set out to do: scare you. Now in a first-person perspective and following a new protagonist, Ethan, you find yourself looking for your wife that's been missing for the past 3 years. Now, after completing the game in one sitting, I'm going to give you my honest opinions and thoughts of this game. Let's start with the pros. I believe that this game brought back the scare factor to Resident Evil. After playing through Resident Evil 5 and 6, I feel the games have become more action-oriented, and this brought it back. After the boat part of the game, the salt mines were awesome, reminded me of Day of the Dead for a bit. Playing through parts of a recording as the person in the recording instead of just watching them was a cool idea. Now, I was skeptical at first, but I feel the first-person perspective helped more than it hindered with the fear factor. The game played out really well in the first hours of the house. I felt things were paced well, and things led off of each other into the next puzzle. After a little bit of a learning curve, getting used to the weapons felt great. And I have to say the sound design was impeccable. Many times I thought something was in the room with me, and I had to check by taking off my headphones to make sure it wasn't. Along those lines, the actors did a great job. I will have to say there was very little to no cheese factor in this installment. Not saying that that's a bad thing, but after Resident Evil 5 and 6, things were getting a little out of control. Now on to the cons. Earlier I spoke about a salt mines area. Before that, there was a tanker or a boat. And this is when the game, I feel like, took a grinding halt for me. I feel like it was the most boring part of the game and really messed with the pacing of the game, if you should say. I felt that the game was unclear with connection to possible Resident Evil universe characters until the very end. And I think that although I liked the tape idea, I feel more story and lore could have actually benefited from this and audio diaries instead of reading and piecing things together. As I said earlier, the connection was a little unclear, with people having to make videos on YouTube about the subject. I get there's a line between someone that's a fan and someone that's a lore master for these games, but when you're treading the latter, I think you've really gone the wrong direction. Aside from the story, I feel that the characters were a little too slow just in general. And with a lot of Resident Evil games, towards the end of the game, I feel that there's just too much. And the game should have ended a little sooner than it did, with other things and levels feeling tacked on just to try to fill a invisible quota. Overall, I really like this game. I find it to be the scariest Resident Evil game in a long, long time. Jesus! Stay out of here! Shit done to dudes right there, too. Jesus Christ! Boom, boom. Jesus Christ! What the fuck? I know you do. With a few minor issues here and there, I feel like if they address those, Resident Evil 8 The Village, or The Village Resident Evil, or whatever they're calling it, could be a really great successor to this game. So check it out this Friday, or don't. Either way, thanks for watching the video. Subscribe, follow, like, share, and all those good things, and stay in the light and watch your back. Boom, boom. Jesus Christ! It's okay. Jesus Christ!